Thanks, Art. I warned him that if he said something wrong, then I did have the last word, so he kind of controlled himself. Isn't it great that this year's Values Voter Summit is the largest Values Voter Summit in the history since its beginning? That is great news as we move forward in 2012, as all of us, I know, are concerned about taking back America and standing for the values that make America great, something that some of our elected leaders seem to want to run from. Liberty Counsel and Liberty University are pleased to be co-sponsors of this event. Liberty University, for those who may not be aware, is now the largest Christian university in the world, with over 70,000 students all over the world, 12,500 students on campus at Liberty University. And I'm proud to be the Dean of Liberty University School of Law. We just launched a Master of Arts in Public Policy. We're training a new generation in public policy, and we're also graduating law school students every year. In fact, we have one of our law school students here who just was sworn into the Florida bar this week on Monday, and she will be a strong advocate for Jesus Christ, standing for Christian values, defending our faith, family, and freedom. And at Liberty Counsel, we just completed yesterday, and it'll go out either today or early Monday morning, our petition to the United States Supreme Court on Obamacare. We represent Liberty University and two private individuals as we filed the first private lawsuit in the country against Obamacare, and now that case is going up to the U.S. Supreme Court. I believe that the Supreme Court will take one of these cases, there's no question in my mind about that, and we'll have a decision no later than the end of June of 2012, right in the midst of this important presidential and election cycle next year on the fate of Obamacare. And may God ultimately grant our wish, and that the final chapter of Obamacare will be written and the final nail in the coffin will be put in that coffin by June of 2012. I encourage you to visit our booth at Liberty Counsel and also Liberty University to learn more about how these organizations are literally changing and training a new generation of champions to defend our family, faith, and freedom. What I wanted to talk to you about today in the time that I have is Israel, America, and the survival of Western civilization. I believe that we are in the most critical time in world history regarding the survival of Western civilization. The future of Western civilization will be determined in our lifetime by our actions. The battles that we face today in the courts, in the classroom, and in Congress are about the survival of our Judeo-Christian values that form the foundation of America's greatness. Similarly, the battle over land in Israel, our greatest ally in the Middle East, is not about real estate or property divisions, but about the destiny of Israel and the Jewish people, and also our destiny as well. What links Israel and the United States together is our heritage and our values. It is these values that are under attack. Let it not be said that on our watch we lost Western civilization. Anita and I have had the privilege of being to Israel 3 times already this year, and in June we met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And we met with him in his private cabinet room to talk about the values that we share together. And the Prime Minister said that Israel and America are linked together inextricably through history and through our shared values. We have not only shared common values, but we also have shared common threats. Israel and America have shared common values that link us together inextricably. It is these Christian values that we, and Judeo-Christian values, that ultimately make America great. For Christians, our faith has roots in Israel. The scriptures were written almost entirely by Jewish individuals and prophets. Jesus himself was a Jew. Western civilization was shaped by what happened in the land of Israel. Monotheism was a significant change in cultural and world history when it ultimately said that there is one God and there is a God that's a creator, significantly different from a policy standpoint than polytheism, where you have gods warring against each other, making arbitrary decisions, and we're just simply the result of their arbitrary self-interested decisions. Monotheism said there is a God, and that God creates. And this God, as a creator God, created you and I in his image and infused us with unalienable rights, among which our Declaration says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And as a result of the fact that there is a God of order, we have a rule of law. It was based upon these premises and principles that the most inventive nation in the world was birthed here on the shores of America. Because if there is a God and there is order, then we can discover through science. And that was the premise for many of our scientific breakthroughs. Anita and I, as I said, have visited Israel 3 times this year. We've had the privilege of preaching about Genesis chapter 12, the promise given to Abraham. Those descendants of Abraham who other nations bless, God will bless, and those who curse them, God will curse them. We traveled to the southern borders and looked over into Egypt. We traveled to the west and looked into Jordan. We traveled to the north in the Golan Heights, and we peered into Syria and Israel. I sat or spoke and visited the very place where Jesus said in Caesarea Philippi, "Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." I am here today to proudly declare that America is pro-Israel. America will always be pro-Israel, and we must stand with the nation of Israel and the Jewish people. Thank you. Mr. Netanyahu, you have a friend in Israel. Though all of the world may turn against you and the Jewish people, America will remain your friend. Despite the fact that Secretary Clinton filed a brief at the U.S. Supreme Court on the birth certificate case saying that Jerusalem should not be included in Israel, you have a friend here in America. Despite the fact that our national leader says that we should return to the 1967 borders, you have a friend in America, and we will stand with you no matter what. We also not only have common values, but we have shared threats as well because of those common values. We have common enemies, and 9/11 jolted us into the reality of what Israel has lived with for decades, every single day. The enemy that seeks to destroy Israel is radical Islam. It does have a face, and we are engaged in a war of terror, and we know what's behind that war of terror. Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, could change world history, according to the Prime Minister Netanyahu, if he would say 8 simple words: "I recognize the right of Israel to exist." But he will not say those because he, like Ahmadinejad, is a Holocaust denier, and both of them want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Until you have that baseline, that we recognize the right of Israel and the Jewish people to exist, then the discussion over land swaps or the 67 borders or any other compromise is absolutely irrelevant, because that is just piecemeal to the ultimate desire to destroy Israel. The same radicalism that hates Israel is the same radicalism that hates America. And in this context, we cannot rely upon the United Nations, because it has indeed become the theater of the absurd. Gaddafi's Libya once chaired the UN Commission on Human Rights. Saddam Hussein's Iraq headed the UN Committee on Disarmament. And today, the Hezbollah-controlled Lebanon presides over the UN Security Council, resulting in a terrorist organization presiding over a body tasked with keeping peace. In other words, America needs Israel, and Israel needs America. We are in a battle. We are in a battle for the survival of Western civilization, and this battle is about the foundations that make America great. Not all those who hate Israel or who hate America strap bombs onto their backs and walk into innocent areas of civilians gathered, or fly airplanes into the side of buildings. No, they also engage in stealth jihad, where they ultimately attack the very foundations until they don't have to fly bombs or planes into buildings that we just simply implode from within. Those who work against America work to destroy the very institutions and the foundations that make America great. And I believe in our lifetime it is the survival of these values in Western civilization that will be determined by our actions or by our inaction. And it's not just radical jihadists, it's also others that destroy institutions, such as Alfred Kinsey, who in 1948 dropped the K-bomb on America and on the world with his book, Sexuality in the Human Male. Table 34 of that book of Kinsey shows how fraudulent and criminal Kinsey actually was in his research. He sought to deconstruct faith and moral values by removing all restrictions on human sexuality. His work is still cited today, as recently as 2003 by the United States Supreme Court. And yet the Table 34 itself shows that Kinsey did incredibly unspeakable things on little children as young as 2 months old, 2 years old, 4 years old as part of his research. Individuals are still alive today where their parents were paid to have sex with them because of Kinsey's research that he dropped in 1948. And it is because of that that law has become deconstructed as early as 1954 with the release of his second book. And this issue of destroying the family, destroying the idea of God, was paramount in Kinsey's mind. The results of his works of sexual anarchy, agenda, the prostitution, rape, family falling apart, the deconstruction of morality, and the punishment of freedom of speech and religion when you disagree is all a part of what Kinsey ultimately sought to do. But like Kinsey, also John Dewey hated God, sought to destroy our faith and Judeo-Christian values. He brought the Frankfurt Institute from Germany to Columbia Teachers College that at the time trained over 60% of America's teachers throughout the country. He helped create the Humanist Manifesto 1 and ultimately founded the American Teachers Federation. Now many of our public schools, and we deal with them every day at Liberty Council, are places that are absolutely hostile to our family, our faith, and our values. We have to represent individuals for simply giving their personal views to individuals sitting next to them in the classroom who, in fact, overheard this by the teacher because they believed that homosexuality is wrong and they faced suspension. Several of those kinds of cases we dealt with in the last few days alone. These values, these fundamental freedoms are literally at stake in these elections and also in our local communities. It is the future of Western civilization that will be determined on our watch, and I firmly believe that. The battles we face in America today are not about necessarily tangible borders, but intangible ones. They involve the borders around life, liberty, and family. And these borders, like those physical borders in Israel, are under intense attack. In America, we are witnessing fierce battles to boot God out of the public schools and out of the public squares, to teach even the youngest of our children about sex and homosexuality, to make abortion a tax-supported right for any reason, and to redefine the very definition of family and marriage. America is also being pushed to the verge of bankruptcy. We are about ready to hit a debt wall, and if we don't stop now, that will ultimately implode America, and there are those who certainly want to do that very thing because they don't believe in American exceptionalism. They don't believe in these core values. In fact, they hate these core values. We also groan in our private practices and businesses with the burdensome regulation that stifle free enterprise and growth. To take it in sum, all of these battles, and many, many more, will determine the survival of Western civilization. I believe in this battle we also need to enlist in our culture war, the Latino community. The Latino community is significantly aligned with our core faith and values, significantly more pro-life and more pro-family, and also more pro-liberty than one might imagine. The Latino community is the fastest growing minority in America, and in short order, in a couple of decades, they will be the same population of Latinos compared to every other population in the United States. It is significantly, exponentially growing. A pastor in Miami started 10 years ago with 300 people. Now he has over 12,000 individuals as part of his church. Those kinds of churches are growing at significantly and rapid pace. We need to actively engage the Latino community. They believe in America, and we must not only... I am concerned about our upcoming election as to who replaces the current president. I'm speaking as an individual and not on behalf of Liberty Council or Liberty University. That's the disclaimer. But personally, I am very concerned about who occupies that White House. But I am also very concerned about the future of the Latino population. And I'm concerned that we will push them as they are kindred spirits in this core battle to fight for and save America. That we will push them into a liberal political leftist machine that is contrary to their values, but also is seemingly open to them. I am concerned about the rhetoric that we as conservatives use with regards to the Latino community. They are not our enemies. They are our friends. They are our allies, and we need to engage them. They also have a significant link, maybe you might not know about that, to Israel. Latinos that have the last name of Perez, or anything Z, Rodriguez, have a significant historical connection with Israel itself. There is a synergy between the Latino community, between Israel and the United States, and between our core founding values that we cherish so much. Let me share a story with you about when President President Clinton met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, because I want to give you some hope, and I want to give you some encouragement. We face significant threats to the future survival of Western civilization and these values. But we also, at a time of adversity, have incredible opportunity. I believe the Latino community is clearly a community that is aligned with our values, and we need to engage them and not push them away. I think they are willing to embrace the political process. I think they are willing to embrace and move forward in this political fight to save America. But when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was the Prime Minister the first time before his current term, he was summoned to the White House by President Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton wanted to talk to him about the so-called 67 borders and how it should be parceled up. Before he came here, he called Dr. Jerry Falwell. Dr. Falwell organized a group of pastors in the nation's capital to greet the Prime Minister when he got off the airplane. When he got off the airplane, the first thing he did is he came to this meeting of pastors. He walked in, and Dr. Falwell was about to acknowledge him, and he said, "No, go ahead and continue. I want to sit down and listen to what you have to say." And so when Dr. Falwell finished his message, Dr. Falwell introduced him as the Ronald Reagan of Israel. And he clearly is a clarion voice. We need a clarion voice here in America in 2012 and beyond. But the next morning, he met with the president. And during the photo op, he was sitting there with the president, snapping photographs, and Bill Clinton leaned over to the prime minister, and he said, "I hear you were meeting last night with Jerry Falwell. He's not my friend." Benjamin Netanyahu leaned back over, and he said, "Well, I consider him to be my friend." That didn't start off the meeting too well. So they went from there after the photo op and the nice smiles into a room, and there on the table was a map. And 2 weeks before, Clinton had met with Yasser Arafat, and they had decided what Israel was going to look like and how they were going to carve up those borders. And as he was talking about how the road to peace means that you have to move all of this land and swap the land and go back to the 67 borders, which, by the way, is absolutely indefensible and would result in the suicide and the destruction of Israel. During that meeting, the president was called out. He came back in. His face was a little white, like he had had something of bad news. He said, "Gentlemen, I'm going to have to reconvene this meeting. We'll have to pick it up some other time. I'm sorry, we can't continue. I've had some pressing issues that have arisen." Well, the prime minister got back on the plane and headed back to Israel. And the news that broke that night was the story of Monica Lewinsky. Mr. President, those who are opposed to Israel, don't mess with Israel. And those who are opposed to and are undermining our foundational, fundamental, shared values that we share with the great land of Israel and the people of the Jewish faith, don't mess with America either, because we are coming back, and 2012 is our year. 2012 will not only be our year, but it'll be our destiny. I believe in our generation, two things will happen. The future of Western civilization will be determined. Let it never be said on our watch that we did nothing. That's the option that we have. I believe that in the face of all the adversity, All the things that we've seen happen over the last several years in our nation's capital, the inability to be able to guide this country, the inability to be able to stand for American exceptionalism, the ability to just simply throw off our greatest ally in the Middle East, and the ability to fund abortion, deconstruct marriage, and ultimately take away our freedom through Obamacare, and you name it, the list can go on and on. Those days are coming to an end. Let it be said on our watch, in our generation, we did not let the Western civilization falter or fall. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.